In this video, Jordan Peterson explains different motivations and emotions.
Now, okay, I have to put a little coda in there, and that's, look, motivations and emotions are not technical terms. They're sort of like id and ego, you know? They're terms that you can use to structure a debate. Like I showed you the hypothalamus, and you see it's made out of all those little nuclei. They're not the same, so you can't say that every part of the hypothalamus is doing something that you can fit into a class, motivation. And motivations and emotions overlap. So, you know, I would say hunger, that seems to be, some of them seem more purely motivation, you know. Like, if you have an unsettling altercation with someone, it tends not to make you hungry. You know, whereas it might make you angry, it might make you happy, it might make you sad, you know. So, hunger is something that seems to pop up one of these maps, and then emotions guide your way through it, or tell you where you are on it. But then you have complex motivation emotions like pain and also anger, because pain has a goal in it, right? Get away, but it's also, or stop or get away, it's usually get away. But it also has an emotional feeling, right? It feels bad, and so it feels like an emotion, pain. Grief is like pain. Disappointment is like pain. So, loneliness is like pain. And I mean this technically. All of those things can be addressed rather successfully with opiates, by the way. So technically they're the same. But pain, you can't really, you know, like, is being hurt an emotion? Well, people say that. I feel hurt. Whatever. And anger is another one of those that's sort of ambivalent, because anger has a goal, right? It's like, remove obstacle. Remove or destroy obstacle. In a sense, that's the goal of anger. But people talk about it as an emotion. So we're oversimplifying. But it doesn't matter, because it's a useful oversimplification. And that's sort of what a theory is, right? A useful oversimplification. So, all right. So, I kind of laid out what I think are the basic motivations there. Hunger, thirst, pain, anger. Thermal regulation, you don't want to be too hot or too cold. Panic or escape. Affiliation or care. Sexual desire. Exploration. Play. And you can kind of divide those into self-maintenance motivations and self-propagation motivations, roughly speaking. Sort of just a way to keep track of them. And then emotions. So the hypothalamus is involved in a lot of that. It's not the only thing, but it's involved in a lot of that. And so here's sort of how I've conceptualized one of these maps, and we've seen this thing before. You're at point A, because if you're using a map, or if you're in a game, you know, there's a starting point, or you're a player, either way. There's you there, and then you're going somewhere, right? And you have to do something to get there. Okay, so that's the little map, and maybe you have to go make a peanut butter sandwich, or you have to go turn the thermostat down, or you need to call your friend, or whatever. But it's the same kind of structure that you're using in all those different situations. And they switch. You know, now you're finished being hungry, now you're thirsty, then you're lonesome. You know, it's like, it's Sisyphus. It's that's right, it's one damn thing after another, roughly speaking. And so that's what keeps you alive. And you have to be chasing things all the time, because your natural tendency is to run out of fuel and decay. And so that's entropy. You have to fight that. And so that's a continual battle, because you're pretty organized, and it's really hard for something that organized to just stay organized, you know. It's a lot easier. There's a million ways to mess up your room. There's like one way to clean it, or maybe 10, you know what, but you get the point. So, and it's the same with anything that's extraordinarily complex. There's not that many ways it can stay in order, and there's a lot of ways it can fall apart. So that's why you're running all the time on a treadmill. You're fighting the second law of thermodynamics? Is entropy the second law of thermodynamics? I think so. That's a major one. So, you know, good luck in your scrap, because you're going to need it. So these little underlying biological systems pop up the primary maps, and then those are elaborated upward into maps that are more and more complicated. And the more and more complicated maps maybe solve 2 problems at the same time for a week, or they solve 10 problems at the same time for 20 years. That's why you want a job or a career, right? I mean, a whole bunch of problems are solved all immediately as soon as you're employed. So, I mean, you have some other problems, but that's inescapable anyways. Okay, so you're inside one of these, so you're always motivated. You're always running around after something. And that's another thing to know too, because the basic state of human beings is not quiescence, You're not napping in front of a fireplace. If you're not pursuing something that you're motivated to pursue, then generally what you're doing is figuring out how to pursue other things that you're motivated to pursue. And that's exploration. So if you're not actively motivated by biological necessity, we'll say for the sake of simplicity, then the next motivation kicks in, is which, well, prepare for the next time that you're so motivated. And that really accounts for our capacity to explore. And we're always zooming around the world trying to figure out what to do with it next, acquiring more information, or even when we're entertaining ourselves, because we're almost always looking at stories when we entertain ourselves, we're still acquiring information that has functional significance and so attractive to us that we find it innately rewarding just to observe that sort of thing. So it's even in strange situations, like people who go to horror movies. It's like, what's wrong with them? It's like, why do you want to go get scared or disgusted? Because that's horror, right? Fear and disgust. This plain uncertainty horror movies like the Blair Witch Project, that's pretty much all fear. And then, the slasher movies and that sort of thing, that's pretty much all disgust. And you might say, well, why bother exposing yourself to that? And part of it is, get over it. It's exposure, because life has terrifying elements and it has disgusting elements, and you're going to have to learn to maintain yourself in the face of that. Certainly illness is going to challenge your capacity to deal with disgust, and there's any number of reasons to be terrified. So you go to movies and you practice facing it, and you observe that you can, and there's other motivations too, but those are the healthy ones that go along with people wanting to expose themselves to dangerous situations.